Hello, everyone. It's Stephanie Boozer with CUGC HQ, and I am so happy to welcome you to today's Connect webinar with EG Innovations. We're going to be debunking some myths about Citrix performance monitoring today, and I know there's probably a few of you out there that are laboring under some of these myths, so we'll get them busted. But before we get started, just an update on all of the events that we have coming up in 2021. Starting in February, we're getting really busy with our local groups. Lots of meetings are already on the calendar, so check that out. Make sure you get signed up. We have 2 big Excel events already opened up and ready for registration, so we hope you'll join us for Great Lakes and Canada. And finally, on February 10th, we welcome EG back to our webinar stage for our Women in Tech panel discussion. We're going to be talking about advancing your career with certifications. And trust me, this is not just a discussion for women in tech. This is for everyone, but I think it's going to be a really great discussion. We've got 4 great women panelists talking about certifications, the process, and how important they are and how they can really help you in your career. So definitely check that out. Our link to the events calendar is down at the bottom of your screen, and I'll put that in the chat for you later. All right, so as we go along today, I just want to let you know this is recorded. You'll receive a link to the recording, and it'll come to you from GoToWebinar, so be on the lookout for that. We'd also like you to submit your questions throughout the presentation. You can put them in the chat window at any time. Be sure to type them in as you have them, but we're going to save them all for the end of the presentation, so keep that in mind. Also, we'd like you to please fill out our survey. I'll put a link in the chat for you at the end. It's short and anonymous and for CUGC use only. All right, with us today we have John Worthington. He's the Director of Customer Success with EG Innovations. Hello, John.
Hello, welcome.
And we also have James Rankin. He's going to be keeping an eye on all of those questions that you're putting in the chat. James is a CTP and he's part of the UK CUGC steering committee. Hello, James.
Hello, I will try and stay alive. I've been sat in this office all day with 4 computers running and the heating on as well, so I'm starting to sweat, but luckily I haven't got my camera on, so you'll be saved from the sight of me sat here sweating like I don't even know what it's like. No, I'll leave that analogy alone.
All right, well, I'm going to get us rocking and rolling here. Let's get going. We have a great presentation, so let's take it away. Hold on a second, get my everything set. All right.
Thanks to the CUGC for having us today. Before we get into the 7 myths of Citrix performance monitoring, we'd like to briefly share some of what we're seeing as a result of the work from home explosion. Now, EG Innovations has been a pioneer in the digital performance monitoring space for over 2 decades, and our patented analytics have a proven ability to adapt to rapidly changing technology landscapes. But one thing has remained constant throughout, and that is our mission to help customers answer the question, why is my application slow? The pace of change continues to accelerate, and there's no better example today than the digital workspace. Back in March of 2019, we were saying that the digital employee experience wasn't critical to the business. 42% said it was only somewhat important. Boy, what a difference 18 months can make. In October of this year, we're now saying the future of work is taking shape right in front of our eyes. In the US, we're seeing the biggest change in the workplace since the start of World War II. And experts now agree that at least 25 to 30% of the entire workforce will work from home at least part of the time. So everyone's rethinking the workplace. So of course, what this means is that Citrix digital workspaces are suddenly mission critical, and it's time to raise the bar when it comes to performance monitoring. Let's take a look at some of the common misconceptions about monitoring the performance of Citrix-based digital workspaces by looking at 7 myths associated with Citrix performance monitoring. Most of you know why a digital workspace can be so performance sensitive. In a Citrix digital workspace, most of the processing happens in the data center on a virtual application server or on a virtual desktop. Users can leverage low power devices like thin clients at the endpoint, and all keystrokes, mouse movements, and other user actions are sent from the endpoint to the data center and processed there. And this is in part why Citrix is session oriented. The user has to establish a session before they can access their desktops and applications. And so myth number one is that monitoring Citrix is about monitoring resources. Now, while it's still important to monitor Citrix resources such as CPU, memory, and disk on Citrix infrastructure, the days of starting troubleshooting bottom up with resource management are over. Citrix administrators need to be focused on the user experience, and this is a top-down approach to monitoring. So if logon time is more than 30 seconds or screen latency is more than 220 milliseconds, chances are your users won't be happy. And in fact, user experience is rarely about one metric alone. For example, logon time is important when you start your session. Application launch time is important whenever you start a new application. Keystroke latency and screen refresh are important when you're working within the application. So Citrix administrators need to be aware of all of these for all users and be able to get real-time and historical views of end user experience. Okay, the first truth we learned was that Citrix administrators must focus on user experience, not just resources. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that EG Innovations isn't monitoring Citrix resources. Server monitoring is necessary, but not sufficient for Citrix performance monitoring. To quickly see the resource metrics for a particular component, just click on it and open up the layer model for the component. The layer models for each component in EG Enterprise are built bottom up with the system and network tiers at the bottom and the application tiers at the top. EG's built-in analytics recognizes top-down dependencies for all components and automatically correlates the state of each layer. You can view dashboards of any component at the system layer, change the view from an overview to a specific metric, look at details or history, and you can do the same thing for the component at the network and application layers. Now, one of the interesting things about this particular scenario is we have a users experiencing performance issues, and there's no alerts at the infrastructure level, network or OS system. So monitoring just the operating system by itself is not going to help you isolate performance issues in a Citrix environment. What's probably more common is to create what we call aggregate components, which are a group of two or more components of a particular type that's monitored as a single logical component. So an administrator might want to know the total number of users who are currently logged into all the Citrix servers in a farm, so that sudden spikes in the load on the farm as a whole can be accurately detected. In a similar way, a Windows admin might want to figure out the average CPU across all the Windows servers in an environment so they can better plan capacity of their Windows load balancing clusters. So the same layer models, the same reports, the same dashboards can apply to aggregate components as they do to individual components. And EG Enterprise has supported many resource monitoring capabilities such as performance ratings and conditional aggregation for a number of years now. But just focusing on resource monitoring alone isn't sufficient for today's Citrix-based digital workspaces. All right, myth number two is that there's lots of Citrix monitoring tools available. And because of the performance-sensitive nature of really any digital workspace, including Citrix, customers have attempted to use many different tools. And in fact, at one point, some Citrix consultants used the phrase "yet another monitor" to refer to Citrix monitoring tool. But there are several questions you'll want to ask when looking for a Citrix monitoring tool. What level of visibility do you want? If all you want to do is monitor the resource usage of your servers, really any system monitoring tool can do that. If you're looking to be alerted to issues, you might look into synthetic monitoring. However, be aware that many HTML-based approaches won't work for Citrix and BDI environments. You'll need one with screen capture and replay capabilities. But if you want to rapidly troubleshoot performance issues, you're going to require the monitor to be Citrix aware. And this means the monitor must have Citrix domain intelligence built in. And this will include things like ICA channel usage and performance, user logon time and breakdowns, EDT performance, websites accessed in a user session, application launch time, active idle time per user, performance of every Citrix tier, and synthetic monitoring of user sessions. The truth is, there's a relatively small list of monitoring products with specialized Citrix domain knowledge built in. EG has deep domain expertise in every layer of the Citrix stack based on over a decade of field experience and our Citrix technology partnership. So user experience monitoring today is a must-have requirement. And to monitor the user experience in a Citrix ecosystem, you'll need to go beyond systems monitoring and include synthetic and real user monitoring, as well as have deep domain knowledge about Citrix tiers. And so there's really a small list of tools that have all these capabilities. The most common simulation we see is user logon, which is available as a free web service from EG Innovations. The logon simulation dashboard allows you to see every step in the logon process: web logon availability and duration, enumeration availability, and application desktop launch and duration. If something is abnormal, you can click on the detailed diagnosis and get a visualization of every step in the logon process. In this case, we see a total simulation time of 70 seconds, and it's taking us 60 seconds to log on. We can clearly see that we have issues in the authentication area of the logon process. EG Enterprise can also simulate a full client session, capturing the time taken for each touch point in the user's digital journey, including screen captures of failed transactions. Of course, EG Enterprise also lets you monitor real users too, from logon to application or desktop usage. Here's an example of a user experiencing logon slowness caused by a group policy issue, which happens to be a drive mapping error. EG monitors each user session and automatically correlates metrics that are impacting the end user experience. We provide deep visibility into Citrix ICA virtual channels. So you can do things like compare HDX latency with client network latency to see whether slowness is originating in the client's network or due to server-side issues. See how long the delay for the session to respond to the user's request was, and use detailed diagnosis to break it down by process accessed by users. EG monitors every ICS virtual channel for every user, and this is critical for managing customer experience in Citrix environments. Our third myth is something we hear all the time from Citrix admins: as long as we're monitoring my technology domain, I'm in the clear. But we know that there are many other non-Citrix tiers that can also impact the user experience. For example, the network connectivity at the user end can often be a key problem. A user could connect through a spotty wireless network and could complain that Citrix is slow. User profiles are also often stored on remote profile servers, and a profile is loaded when a user logs in and unloaded when the user logs out. If disk accesses on the profile server are slow, this is going to show up as slow Citrix logon time. And when users log in, they must be authenticated. So Citrix login involves Active Directory, and slowness in an Active Directory service is also going to result in slow logons. In repeated surveys of Citrix admins, we consistently find that problems in the non-Citrix tiers, such as network, infrastructure services, storage, and so on, outrank Citrix tiers as the cause of performance issues. Today, the vast majority of Citrix administrators understand they need centralized visibility across Citrix and non-Citrix tiers. So our third truth is that monitoring the Citrix tiers in isolation is not enough to assure the user experience. As important as it is to monitor every Citrix tier, there are other non-Citrix dependencies that are also required to assure end user experience in Citrix ecosystems. Let's take Active Directory as an example. If you're taking advantage of Citrix Federated Authentication Server, or CFAS, EG will let you easily view the status of CFAS certificates and their details, track authorization definitions that are in session and view their details, monitor the details of sessions, request times, private key operations, and others, even track the number of unique and expired users and view their certificate definitions and thumbprint details. And of course, you can extend Active Directory monitoring and leverage EG's pre-built models for automatically isolating typical AD issues like replication, account lockouts, database issues, and others. Here's an example service topology map. This illustrates the end-to-end nature of the embedded analytics in the monitor. And just like the top to bottom layer models, the monitor color codes the components to help pinpoint where issues are originating. In this case, we see the XenApp servers having a major issue, and clicking it takes us to the virtual topology, since the XenApp server is actually running on an ESX host, which is where the critical issue is. You can click the ESX component, go right to the layer model, and see that the inside view layer is where the critical issue is. Looking into this layer, we can see the virtual machine that's having an issue, click on it, and see that we have CPU issues. And then further through a detailed diagnosis, see that it's due to a backup job. This is an example of EG's patented in and out monitoring technology. It's another example of how EG Enterprise gives you 360-degree visibility, in this case into hypervisor and virtual machine performance from the outside and inside. So this is just a couple of examples of why monitoring Citrix tiers in isolation won't be enough to assure end user experience, which is probably why 91% of Citrix admins say they need centralized visibility of both Citrix and non-Citrix tiers. All right, next up is the thought that built-in Citrix monitoring tools can give you sufficient insights. Now, Citrix Director is the default monitoring and troubleshooting tool from Citrix, but Director's main focus is on monitoring XenApp servers and XenDesktop VMs, as well as the sessions running on them. But you need to use other consoles to get a view of other Citrix tiers. Proactively isolating end-user performance issues with Citrix Director alone doesn't give you single pane of glass visibility into every Citrix tier, let alone other digital workspace dependencies. So the truth is, built-in Citrix monitoring tools only provide limited insight. Now, one of the biggest challenges customers face is helping the organization balance a portfolio of monitoring tools. Every platform will have some ability to monitor and administer their tool. Director is the Citrix tool for XenApp and XenDesktop. And of course, the best thing about Director is that it comes with XenApp or XenDesktop. If you need alerting, app probing, desktop usage reporting, long-term historical reporting, or other features, you'll need a Platinum license. But customers can use Director for free and get basic monitoring capabilities for Citrix XenApp and XenDesktop. The question is Citrix Director sufficient for end-to-end monitoring of Citrix workspace environments, especially given today's mission-critical digital workspaces? Now, besides EG's ability to provide an integrated view of both Citrix and non-Citrix tiers, EG also provides some additional Citrix-specific capabilities that Director does not. And there's a blog post we did that goes into this in detail, but here's a summary. We gave you a quick look at EG's logon and full session simulation earlier. Director uses application probes, which have limitations such as the need for multiple probes and no visibility of external access through Citrix NetScalers. EG also gives you more granularity, such as greater ability to differentiate server-side from client-side issues, web processing delays, and profile issues around logon processing. We also provide a single central console and a consolidated view of the entire Citrix ecosystem. And this includes supporting tiers such as Active Directory, virtualization, storage, network, and others. So one of the most important differences is EG's embedded domain expertise, predefined models for all Citrix and non-Citrix tiers automate the triage process for complex performance issues. We also auto baseline and automatically correlate performance across different tiers and pinpoint the root cause. Extensive reporting capabilities are out of the box. We have significant integration capabilities, including a command line interface, a REST API, and integrations with common ticketing systems and tool chains. And it doesn't matter whether you have a platinum license or not. EG works with both enterprise and advanced versions of Citrix. And the bottom line is the built-in Citrix monitoring tools don't provide the end-to-end insights needed to monitor today's mission-critical digital workspaces. As a result of the work-from-home explosion, many organizations learned that monitoring is needed for more than troubleshooting and diagnosing problems. But monitoring tools should also provide you with insights needed to optimize and right-size your Citrix infrastructure. And anyone that's had to figure out what they're going to need when suddenly the number of users expands tenfold has felt the anxiety that goes along with having to answer questions like, is the workload balanced across my Citrix servers? Are my VMs right-sized, or do they have too much memory allocated to them? What are the most resource-intensive applications being used? And are they corporate applications? What URLs are users surfing on their virtual desktops? Is there a lot of disconnected sessions running, and is that taking off resources? And on and on. So our truth number 5 is that Citrix monitoring offers much more value beyond just problem diagnosis. In fact, the ability to perform right sizing and capacity planning across all digital workspace dependencies is what's really required. Helping customers answer the question, why is my application slow, is a traditional and still a very important perspective of performance monitoring. But historical reporting and analytics are more important than you might think. In fact, analysis of historical data, capacity planning, optimization, and audit activities are essential elements of proactive management. Let's take a look at a few examples. One of the things you might see EG operators do is look at a measure graph, zoom into a time period, and then search the detailed diagnosis tab for the same interval, which helps to isolate performance issues. So let's here look back at past issues to help you prevent them in the future. Capacity planning is another use case. Here's a virtual apps capacity planning report that lets you see the current workloads, track resource consumption and trends, and get detailed insights and recommendations for capacity planning. You can see how sessions are load balanced across all servers, what the top 10 servers that can handle more user sessions are, and based on current capacity, get an insight into how many user sessions can be added. In a similar way, we can use the capacity prediction report to see what the impact of increased loads will be, see what the impact on resources is, and how many servers will be needed. This kind of what-if analysis can help optimize Citrix resources. And finally, there's a number of reports that can be generated for audit and compliant purposes. We've seen a lot of active idle session reports lately. It helps track how long each user was logged into their desktops and determines how actively they used the desktops. So in order to achieve proactive management of end user experience, you need to combine automated diagnosis with capacity planning, prediction, historical analysis, and audit. All right, myth 6 is this over-provisioning myth. Some administrators feel that as long as they have adequate CPU and memory resources, they won't run into performance issues. And of course, this is far from the truth. Let's say when users log on, Citrix accesses a remote share drive. If the remote share is unavailable, users will see logon slowness, and you can add all the CPU and memory you want, and it still won't address this issue. Or what if one of the applications being accessed via Citrix has a memory leak? This is eventually going to cause slowness, and adding more memory to the server or desktop might help in the short term, but this problem is never going to go away no matter how much memory you add. And finally, a faulty disk drive or storage device can cause slow performance, and adding more capacity is not necessarily going to address this issue either. So effective monitoring really should also drive cost-effective utilization of resources, and over-provisioning does nothing to meet the business goal of maximizing investments in infrastructure. So not only does over-provisioning not address many performance issues, it's expensive as well. Let's take storage, for example. Many tiers of an IT infrastructure depend on storage. So when a slowdown happens, you have to figure out whether the slowdown is due to storage or is it because of one of the other tiers. EG supports unified monitoring of storage from all the major platforms. And with layer models specific to each, can give you deep visibility into storage subsystems, automatically correlating performance with the other infrastructure tiers. So we'll automatically isolate issues at the hardware level. We'll monitor disk health, RAID groups, the state and I/O activity of LUNs, as well as the state, size, and usage of read-write cache. And like all EG components, you can use built-in reports and dashboards to answer critical questions so you can avoid over-provisioning resources. And so not only is over-provisioning of resources expensive, it doesn't address performance issues, and in fact has double the impact because money spent on unneeded resources is no longer available for other critical areas, including adequate performance monitoring. All right, this last myth is an interesting one. A common approach to monitoring Citrix user experience has been to deploy agents on every endpoint. The idea is that we can snoop on the traffic going to and coming from the endpoint. But deploying agents on thousands of endpoints can be a hassle, and many endpoints may not even have the resources needed to run additional agents. And of course, you now have the maintenance headaches too. What's interesting about this is that, remember we said in Citrix and other digital workspace technologies that most of the processing happens in the data center? Logons, application launches, and even keystrokes and mouse movements are all sent from the endpoint and processed in the data center. So the endpoint agents are not going to have the visibility into various steps associated with logons, or whether Active Directory is slow, or whether GPO processing is taking too long, whether user profile is too big, and so on. In fact, one of the biggest reasons for deploying agents on endpoints has been to capture overall user latency and network level latency. With Citrix 7.x, EG can now get insights into Citrix connection quality, access speed, bandwidth used, screen refresh latency, and latency to the user terminal, without the need for an agent on the endpoint. So the truth of this is you don't need agents on endpoints to monitor Citrix user experience. Here's a user experience dashboard. These dashboards can be published so a user could enter their domain username and see the performance of their Citrix or virtual desktop session. Help desk staff and administrators can also use the dashboard to handle user complaints. You can scroll across to see the different performance measures, and you can easily add or remove measurements as needed. I can also go to a session topology view for my particular session. This shows me every component that my current session is traversing through, what the current connection quality is, and where any performance issues are originating. Remember, while we can monitor the endpoints, most of the processing is happening outside the user's endpoint device. I can also see granular logon details in real time. Customers should focus performance monitoring investments in areas that most impact the end user experience, and in many cases, that is not in the endpoint device. So what we've done today is give you a little bit of a checklist when looking at performance monitoring solutions for your digital workspace. Now, first is you must focus on the end user experience. You need to make sure you look at tools with deep Citrix domain expertise. Remember, you'll need to monitor all digital workspace dependencies in context. Don't limit performance monitoring to Citrix tools. Recognize that monitoring is much more than problem diagnosis. Invest in monitoring, not over-provisioning. And focus your monitoring investments on those areas that impact user experience. Now, before I wrap it up and take some questions, I want to add just one more thing. The traditional end user computing role is shifting to an end user experience role. And as usual with disruptive changes like this, we get into a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So I'd like to comment on the user experience craze. First of all, don't panic. It's true we're going through transformational change, but that's really nothing new for IT. Remember that the foundation of the digital user experience is site and application performance, and consumers take this for granted. Remember the basic truths about managing Citrix digital workspace performance. So while user interface design and effective workflows are also important parts of the overall user experience, they're useless without good site and application performance. EG provides enterprise-class integration, including a command line interface, a REST API, and integrations with popular ticketing systems, orchestration, and tool chains. And this lets the monitor trigger automated workflows, including those from Citrix micro apps. So our bonus truth today is don't let a focus on workflow distract you from the basics. Workflows aren't much help without good site and application performance. And this has been EG Innovation's focus for 2 decades. You have no hope of a good user experience if site or application performance is poor. To digital consumers, there's no satisfactory excuse for a poor digital experience, and responsive applications and websites are now table stakes. So whether you deploy EG Enterprise as a cloud service or on your premises, the monitor directly addresses all of the basic truths about Citrix performance monitoring. All right, so let's take some questions.
It would help if I took myself off mute before I start asking the questions. It's always a good place to start. Right, I've got a few in that the sort of things that I would have particularly expected, given because obviously, as we all know, Citrix are very keen on a thing they've got called Citrix Cloud at the minute, and obviously a lot of people are even switching their licenses across to manage their on-premises sort of infrastructures from Citrix Cloud control planes as well. So, you know, how much does EG monitoring work with Citrix Cloud for monitoring a virtual app and desktop delivery? Can you give us any details on that?
Yeah, we do work with Citrix Cloud. We were the first third-party vendor to provide native support for Citrix Cloud, and all of the Citrix Cloud components have pre-built models, just like other out-of-the-box components, and the analytics and correlation and baselining work exactly the same way with cloud components, Citrix and other cloud components, as they do with on-premise components. So the short answer is absolutely. In fact, a lot of our customers who are migrating to Citrix Cloud are customers because they are migrating to Citrix Cloud. They wanted to get a baseline first, and then they're continuing to monitor once they move to the cloud.
So is there any, I mean, obviously when you move into Citrix Cloud, the kind of, you know, all your traditional like sort of ways of having stuff that stood up there, you know, you've got everything's delivered as services now, right? So you don't have any, you have a gateway service now, and the database is all rolled up in that service, and your storefronts in there, et cetera, et cetera. Do you have to stand up EG infrastructure in cloud to support that, or is there an EG kind of cloud service that you can sign into and do it that way?
Well, we use the Citrix API, so we don't need to establish any infrastructure inside Citrix Cloud per se. It's done in an agentless fashion. And in terms of delivering the EG monitoring, that can be done either on-premise or as a SaaS service. So customers have a choice of deployment models.
So you could have your EG stuff on premises doing all your monitoring, and you could still have it hooked into Citrix Cloud, and you could do the same with a full cloud service from EG as
Yes,
well, yeah?
that's correct. Yep.
Excellent. That's my next question down in here.
And by
Yeah,
the way,
this one.
James, if I can't answer any question, I promise I'll promise the audience that we'll respond via email. If there's a question I can't handle, I'll be sure and get them an answer, just so everyone knows.
It is not a problem. The next one, I think this was probably one you could have possibly anticipated a bit as well. Now, it's obviously that what you've got inside of Citrix Cloud, which I think was last year, unless I'm getting older and older and I've totally lost track of time, it might have been the year before, was when Citrix Analytics came out, which is obviously a service that we've got there. Now, I remember looking at Citrix Analytics when it first came out and thinking, you know, it looked nice, but it was very, very lightweight and quite immature. So maybe I'm being a bit unfair, and I apologize to any Citrix Performance Analytics people who might be listening by saying that it was quite immature, because it may have come on superbly since the last time I looked at it. But how do they, you know, if you ran EG, would you need Citrix Performance Analytics if you had it, or would it replace it, or could they complement each other?
I think they probably complement each other. I probably should. There's probably someone that could answer that a little bit better than I. I think there is some overlap there, but I think they probably could be complementary. So I know that's not the best answer in the world, but I wouldn't consider them an either or kind of choice.
I was going to say, actually, because I mean, as I said in my quick disclaimer that I got in there, is a long time since I've looked at Citrix Analytics. Citrix Analytics looked to me like, you know, it had a lot of potential in there, but there wasn't much drill down through detail. And I mean, having worked with EG and various other monitoring tools, I know that really the devil is in the details, right? That's how it works. So, you know, I would say at the minute that EG probably has vastly more insight than anything you're likely to get out of Performance Analytics. I mean, when I looked at it, it was basically your logon times trended, your application launch times trended, your machine failures trended, and not much else. At that time, and as I said, I may be being quite unfair, but at that time, I mean, even Director would have been better than Analytics, right? Analytics was just presented in a slightly better way. So I think Analytics has got a long way to go to catch up, if I'm being perfectly honest. But as I said, I may be being horribly nasty about it, and it may have got loads better.
Well, one thing I can say pretty confidently is the same kind of baseline in analytics we have on the Citrix ecosystem, we extend to the non-Citrix ecosystem components, which are dependencies in a digital workspace. So that is definitely something that is going to be different than the Citrix Analytics.
Right. We've also got a question mentioning Citrix WEM on premises, but I'm not entirely sure of the context that the question's been asked in. I don't know whether it's meaning, I mean, you wouldn't really tie EG into monitoring the Citrix WEM service itself, although I'm sure EG could tell you if WEM was dragging your machines down, as it sometimes does. Again, I may be being unfair to Citrix WEM.
We do monitor WEM. I know we do it on-prem. I don't know if we do as part of the Citrix Cloud service. That I'm not sure of.
All right, so it's actually got hooks that can go into WEM and see what the performance is like there and how it's affecting.
Yep.
Right. Okay, I think that should be covered. It does say on premises, so I shall not belabor the point about Citrix Cloud WEM service. Again, I shouldn't really talk about WEM because I spent so much time in the world of AppSense that I'm sometimes a little unfair to WEM as well. Lots of people keep telling me that it's very good. You can make it do what you want it to. Let me just scroll down through my list. Right, is it agentless, or do you have to have an agent for EG?
Well, there are agents. 90% of our customers use a combination of agent-based and agentless data collection. So the answer is a little bit of both, actually. So, for example, we'll use an agent on a XenApp server, but other components will collect agentlessly. So we'll use an API or SNMP for network devices as an example.
Right, so just connect SNMP traps coming out of them, so there's no need for an agent on things like that.
Yep.
Excellent. Did me scrolling down. Do you need agents for your hypervisors if you're monitoring your hypervisors and things like that?
Nope, that's an agentless approach, and again, we allow another nice feature of the AG is that inside and outside view of both the ESX and the guest VMs as an example.
Can you do integration with systems, you know, SIEM systems like the likes of Splunk, for instance? So could you take the data that's being gathered by AGI and forward it to a Splunk instance?
Absolutely, and we are doing that. So there's a number of integrations. I think they're on our website, but and most of the integrations are using the REST API or web services, but we also have a command line interface, and I've had a command line interface for a number of years now.
Right, so is that a command line like AG's got its own set of like sort of executables and you can then just run sort of batch scripts from there as well, yeah?
Yes, we provide you with an out-of-the-box library of scripts, and you can add your own as well.
Right. So does that, I mean, what sort of, are those scripts written in particular, are they PowerShell scripts or?
I think there's they're PowerShell and other, we support other languages as well. So I don't know, right. It's on the website, but I don't know off the top of my head, I'm sorry.
That's fair enough. I think everybody just tends to look at PowerShell hooking into your APIs and command.
Well, PowerShell is definitely supported, so that's not a problem.
But it's good that actually you would do integration with the likes of Splunk, because I think kind of there's almost 3 levels of customer that you've kind of got when it comes to monitoring, right? You've got the customers who want something that's very much off the shelf, you know, they just want to grab a product, plug it in, and away they get with their reports and their out of the box sort of metrics and things like that. And then you've got customers right down the other end of the line that want to just send it into something else like Splunk that they manage, and then they can use that data and create their own custom dashboards. Actually, I've got a customer that I do a lot of work with at the minute. They're very much on board with that. Everything, they just want it all sent into there, and they'll design their own dashboards, which is great, really, because then you can integrate things. For instance, you know, for our Citrix Cloud, we've also got things like MFA and file servers where profile sits, and these are things that normally, you know, you don't get that in that EUC dashboard, but they're integral parts of it, right? And then you've got the customers who are kind of like a bit halfway between, really, and they want some off the shelf metrics. You know, they want red, yellow, greens representing their servers and the resource utilization, but they also want that capability to, when they get something that comes along, to be able to put a bit of scripting in to give them some, you know, some level of customization in there as well. So I think you probably, do you think you tick all of those boxes? It sounds like that you do.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I think personally, I think we're really a domain specific AIOps tool. You could look at us at that way, and we can be used in a very synergistic way with a domain agnostic tool like a Splunk. So there's definitely room for both, and for a large enterprise, that can be a good strategy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking from my own personal point of view here. I have a hosted environment for one of my customers, where they're an AG customer, and clearly they're not using anywhere near the full suite of stuff that's available in the product. Because I just halfway through that presentation sent a message to one of my architects saying, how come our hoster, who shall be nameless, doesn't give us reports with all of this stuff in? So I'm very annoyed now, because I mean, we don't get much visibility into it, but I know AG's running on it because I can see the agent sat on the machines, which is very, very nice. Is it complicated to do an install? That's another question I've got there. How long would it take you, you know, a greenfield site to just throw it in and set it up?
Well, it depends. If you use the SaaS service, we can be collecting metrics in 15, 20 minutes. So you know, that's probably the fastest way. If you want to do it on-prem, as long as you have the environment ready, so you need a virtual machine for the manager, a virtual machine for the database. If you have that ready to go, then I don't know, an hour, a couple hours, we should be collecting data. So it's not a huge amount of effort to get the thing up and running.
Right. I mean, I know. I mean, from my personal experience as an implementer and a consultant, and whatnot. It's often you come into environments and people say, oh, can we set up a proof of concept? But I also know that it's a very fine line to tread for a vendor, because if you give somebody something, and you make it fully functional for them, there's always that risk that they're going to just run it for some particular project and then back out, and you never get the sales sort of thing. So what sort of restrictions do you have when it comes to running a proof of concept? Is there like only so much data gets returned or something like that?
That's a question near and dear to my heart, James. So here's my advice. Look, we have first of all, you can get the logon simulator free forever right off the website. So that's number one. If you're really doing an evaluation and you're not sure of the initial deployment, you just want to get a better feel for the product, the easiest thing to do is a 30-day trial. Do it web-based. You can use your components and use our EG Cloud Manager, and then let us know that you're going to do that. So we start the clock and you get 30 days to kick the tires. I would use that 30 days and say, okay, if now we know how we want to deploy it. If there's still hurdles that have to be cleared, you can negotiate a proof of concept with us. And at least you're past the evaluation point. You pretty much know what you want to do, and you can focus the proof of concept on the areas that you absolutely have to flush out before you deploy. That's what I would do.
Yeah, this one's, as I said, things like that have burned me a lot in the past, because not through companies actively trying to, get something for nothing really, but just because the procurement processes hold things up so awfully, and especially when you're trying to build a wider business case for an environment. And I've had a couple of times where I've stood up proof of concepts and everything's looked great, and then it's just withered on the vine. It becomes very frustrating, because then I end up with a service and I don't have any monitoring, and I feel like I'm always trying to retrofit monitoring when really you need to get it in at the project inception stage. But I recognize that it's very, very difficult, especially in particular verticals as well.
That's why I think, where it's possible, if you can do the 30-day trial, you can use that 30 days to build the business case. And then when you hit the POC, you know exactly what you need to do to clear any final hurdles. That's to be a reasonable approach.
I've also seen places that I still do work at, where we've started a proof of concept for, as you say, a month or something, and then it takes them 3 weeks to open the firewall ports to do it.
That's right.
Like that, which means I get 7 days.
Yeah.
So it's, but as I say, yeah, you can go back and negotiate that. I just had a question come in there saying, and this one sounds a bit highly technical, so I'll be won't hold it against you if you pass it off. But how would it affect the end-to-end monitoring if certain elements are not connected with an API or an agent, etc.? Does it give any errors? So I take it we're talking about if there's I'm just trying to understand.
I think I understand the question. If we've got a target component that is within the scope of the target monitored environment, and we lose connectivity, for example, we can't collect data, the monitor will show it as blue, right, which means that we're not collecting any metrics. And so if it's a connectivity, the API can't communicate, or there's a permission missing or something, you'll get a blue, and you'll need to look into that, because that means the monitor's telling you, hey, I can't get any data from this guy.
Right. The other thing I was going to say as well is, and I mean, obviously COVID response has been quite a big part. I mean, I know you've got certain elements, where you can see a user session and say the latency and things like that. So it gives you a good view of what's going on at the client end. Can you easily configure that so you can like create custom views for your help desk and things like that?
Oh yeah. We do that all the time. All of the views of the monitor are configurable, so you can configure what part of the monitor infrastructure this particular role or person should have visibility to, and you can also create both scheduled and on-demand custom reports, as well as customized dashboards for different roles. Typically the roles that we identify most of is the admin, the operator, and what we call an alarm viewer, or might be a help desk person. Those are the typical kind of generic roles, and we typically map those roles to roles in the organization when we do a deployment.
Cool. And I think final one we've got here. Now, this is another one that actually kind of, as COVID came along, excuse me, I got quite surprised at, but if you roll back about, I don't know, 10 years or so, and if you ever had any like sort of self-help tools for users and user interfaces, nobody ever wanted to let them near them, right? Because they thought they would just try and use, you know, when all you've got is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? So they were worried that every problem the user had, they would use like the profile reset help tools to reset their profiles and things like that. But all of a sudden now in COVID, everybody's mad keen on self-help kind of tools. So is there anything within EG that you can do that allows users to like sort of, you know, do any sort of self-help stuff or anything like that?
You could probably do that through some Citrix workflows. There's nothing directly in the product that necessarily lets an end user do kind of self-help, but I will say that there is a knowledge base integrated in the product, which is kind of nice. And so that knowledge base is site specific. So if a EG operator, for example, is working on a performance issue, they can literally search that knowledge base, and it goes right down to the alarm and measurement level. So if there is a best practice fix that was done, it'll be in the knowledge base, and they could replicate that. So that's kind of an answer to I think what you were getting at.
Cool. And there, just on cue, after I've said last question, there's somebody's put another question in. Can you launch reboots of target devices through the AJ console? I'm assuming that you can.
Yes.
Just about everything else
Yep.
can.
Yep.
There you go then. Nice simple one to round off. And I think that's us done for questions now. So
if we didn't get to any, we'll get to you via email after the webinar. So thank you very much, James. I appreciate it.
No problem. That was quite informative, and I've had to open the window now because I was about to die of heat exhaustion. So luckily we're at the end now. So let's go hand back to Stephanie if she's still there.
I'm here. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone, for being on today. I threw a couple of links in the chat for you. It looks like the first link kind of didn't come across as a link. Hold on one second. I'll fix that. One's for the survey that's super short and anonymous, like I mentioned earlier. And there you go. That's better. And the second one is to our events calendar. That is the calendar I showed you at the earlier top of the hour. All of our upcoming meetings, Excel events, and more webinars, including that Women in Tech webinar on the 10th with EG. So we hope you'll check those out. And finally, I know some of you may have opted in to receive a prize. So we will draw the prize winner off the air. We will do it at random. I like to get the full spreadsheet after GoToWebinar is over, because some of you register and log in after we start. So I want to give everyone a fair shot. So we'll do that after we're done. I'll use the Google randomizer. We'll pull a number and I'll announce the winner on Twitter. So be sure you follow us at MyCUGC. And I just want to give a big round of applause to John from EG and James for keeping an eye on those questions. Thanks, you guys.
Well, thank you.
I should now go and get my tea because I'm starving.
Well, I don't want to keep answering the tea. Well, I hope you all have a great rest of your day and you stay happy, healthy, and safe. And we see you at another CUGC event again soon. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Be good.